Our reading today comes from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 13, verses 24 through 37. But in those days after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is coming. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that God is coming. God is near at the very gates. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It's like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on the watch. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at cock-crow, or at dawn, or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all, keep awake. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. On your way into church this morning, you may have seen a particular symbol, an image, out in front of the church. And Isabella helped me bring it in so that all can see it at some point. It is an empty manger. What is missing from an empty manger? Our temptation is to rush in and have the right answer, right? Our temptation is to say, I know that story, Pastor, I know that story, I know what happens on December 25th, I know exactly where all this is going. That's our temptation. But right now, I invite you each to resist that temptation. Don't rush to the end of the story. Let's take a moment. Let's wait together before we answer and sit with this question. Do we know what is missing from an empty manger? Just as God has yet to fill that manger, there is something missing in each of our lives that God has yet to fill. Do you know what is missing? The prophet Isaiah knew what was missing. Isaiah watched as his country was decimated by a foreign empire. He saw the children and the women and the men of his country sent into exile, made prisoners and slaves by their enemies. And God did nothing. God was nowhere to be found. So Isaiah pleaded with God to tear apart heaven itself and shake the mountains of the earth. Isaiah knew that justice was missing. Isaiah knew that redemption was missing. Isaiah knew God was missing. As a man standing with his followers in Jerusalem, Jesus of Nazareth also knew what was missing. His disciples invited him to peer around at the huge, gorgeous temple, God's house, and to look at all the other amazing stone buildings that had been made in Jerusalem. They were astonished by this. These were simple fishermen from a small little village out by the sea. This might have been the first time they had ever seen such amazing things. And they said, Jesus, look at all this. Aren't you amazed by this? And Jesus said, no. Jesus saw all of these buildings, this whole great city, as passing fancies. Even the temple, the house of God, even that had been torn down before. And it would happen again. There had been wars before, and there would be wars again. There had been exile and slavery and devastation of all kind. It would happen again. It might be worse than before. It wasn't difficult for anyone to see this. All you have to do is be human, be alive, be awake. And you see the passing world before us. Nothing lasts. Nothing's permanent. But Jesus saw something that most others did not. What was difficult for the disciples to believe, what it was difficult for them to see, is what Jesus saw missing from the picture. Everyone could see what had happened already. And Jesus wanted to call all of his disciples' attention, including all of us in this room. Jesus wanted to call attention to what was yet to come. God coming into the world. There should be nothing surprising about things changing, buildings falling apart, empires coming and going. This is what has happened throughout human history. But what becomes surprising in this teaching, what Jesus needs all of us to see, is that when everything we have ever known falls away, it's a sign that God is coming into the world to do something new. That is surprising. That is shocking. Everything we have ever depended on, everything we have ever known as normal, everything that has made us feel comfortable and certain, everything that brings meaning and purpose to our lives, it will, at some point, pass away. Jesus says it himself, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. And what Jesus tries to reveal to us is that it's only when everything falls apart, only when we feel empty, are we finally able to see what's been missing this entire time. Where do we look for hope? Let's not look for our hope in what has already been. Let's look for our hope in what has yet to come. Friends, we are living in perilous times. Everything we know and depend on is shifting right beneath our very feet. It makes us anxious. It makes us afraid. We are being asked to do more than ever before while feeling empty, sensing that something is missing. So on this first day of Advent, we need to hear Jesus' words for us. These are signs of something new. This isn't devastation and despair for the sake of devastation and despair. This is everything coming to pieces so God has somewhere new to work. They're signs of something we have yet to see. Something more. So keep awake. Watch the signs. What is missing from an empty manger? What is missing from your life? Friends, keep awake.